Okay. So, what one student is saying is that they do not have doubts as such in any of the topics, but important topics she wants me to revise. Okay. Okay. One second. Let me share the screen. See, kinds of contracts. This was on the first day. We discussed this on the first day. Different kinds of contracts. This is very important, right? So there are three types or based on which you can classify contracts. One is on the basis of enforceability, one is on the basis of extent of execution, and the other one is on the basis of mode of creation, right? So this is important. You need to understand what are the different types of contracts and what is the basis for which what is the basis on which these contracts have been classified. So the first one is enforceability. That means, are these contracts enforceable or not? That is one parameter for classifying contracts. So based on that, you have a valid contract, which is enforceable by law. Voidable contract is a contract which is enforceable by law at the request of one party, but not at the request of the other party, right? So contracts that have been entered into without free consent are examples of voidable contracts, right? So void contract is a it's a null and void contract. It cannot be enforced at all at any point of time, not at the request of any party at all. And unenforceable contracts are those contracts which cannot be enforced because of some technical defects, right? Similarly, you have executed contract and executory contract. Executed contract is where both the parties have fulfilled their promises. Executory contract is a contract where either one or two parties, they have not yet fulfilled their contracts, right? Then express contract, implied contract, and quasi contract. Quasi contract is also important. This question is frequently asked for your 2 marks or not 2 marks, so short bits, short questions, right? So express contract is that contract where both the parties enter into a contract based on clearly expressed terms and conditions, where terms and conditions are expressed through words verbally. Implied contract where the terms and conditions are implied or understood based on actions, right? And quasi contract is no party has the intention to enter into a contract, but law creates this contract, right? So this contract is based on the principle that one person shall not be allowed to unduly benefit because of uh, uh, the mistake that has been committed by another person. So, for example, if one person forgets some goods belonging in another person's house, it is the responsibility of the other person to return those goods, right? So that is a quasi contract. Then essentials of a contract, valid contract. This is also very, very important. So if an essay question is asked you as to what are the essential elements of a valid contract, you have to write about all these things: offer, acceptance, consideration, capacity to contract, free consent, legality of object and consideration. All these things you have to write. Some case studies also you have to include, right? Then what are the essential elements of a valid offer? This is also important. So what are those essential elements? The first one is offer must be communicated to the party. That means as long as an offer is not communicated to the party, it is not an offer. For example, I want to sell my house to B. I have that thought in my mind for 1 month, but I am not telling it to B. As long as I don't tell it to B, it is not an offer. It becomes an offer only when it is communicated to B. It must be communicated to the concerned person. So I have that idea in my mind. I tell 10 other people, I tell 20 other people. No, it will be considered as an offer only when it is communicated to the concerned person, right? And then offer must be made with a view to obtain the consent of the other person. That is the offering. The offer must have definite and clear terms. Like I want to sell you my house for a good price. Is this an offer? No, it is not an offer. Why? Because what is meant by good price? There is no clear understanding of it. So an offer, in order to be valid, must have clear and definite terms. Then the offer must be capable of creating a legal relationship. Offers should be like that. So I told you, I gave you an example. If somebody invites you to come to their home for lunch, that cannot be an offer. That cannot be called as an offer because it cannot give rise to any legal relationship. That is just a social interaction. The offer must express the final willingness of the offerer. So if I say, I want to sell you my house for 1 lakh rupees, that shows my final willingness. But if I say, I am thinking of selling my house to you either for 1 lakh or 2 lakh rupees. Now, this does not show the final willingness on my part. So that is why it is not an offer. And then the last one is an offer should not contain a term, the non-compliance of which would amount to acceptance. So for example, I tell X, will you buy my house? If yes, you tell me by today evening. If you don't tell me, I will think that you don't want to buy it. Or if you don't tell me anything, I will assume that you want to buy the house. Such kind of conditions should not be there in offer. That cannot be called an offer. Right? Similarly, acceptance also has certain essential elements. Acceptance must be communicated. Acceptance must be communicated to the offerer himself. That means I have asked X, will you buy my house for 1 lakh rupees? I am the offerer. So X should give acceptance to whom? X should give acceptance to me only. X should not give acceptance to anybody else. X cannot come to my house and give acceptance to my parents, to my husband, to my children. That is not acceptance. When I made the offer, I am the offerer. Acceptance also must be given to me. Next, acceptance must be communicated by the person who has the authority to accept. Right? So I have asked X, will you buy my house for 1 lakh rupees? X family members, X daughter or son cannot come and give acceptance because they don't have the authority to accept. Offer was not given to them. So when offer was not given to them, how will they get the authority? They will not get the authority. And again, acceptance must be absolute and unqualified. What does it mean? For example, if I've asked X, will you buy my house for 1 lakh rupees? So X should say yes or no. And if he says yes, it means he is agreeing to my terms and conditions. It means he is agreeing to my terms and conditions. He cannot say, yes, I will buy your house, but I will not buy it for 1 lakh rupees. I will buy it for 90,000 rupees. Is this an absolute acceptance? No, this is not an absolute acceptance. So for acceptance to be valid, it must be absolute. It must be unqualified. If X says, like I told you, yes, I will buy your house, but I will buy it for 90,000, then that is not acceptance to the offer that I gave. That is a new offer. Okay. Then again, acceptance should be given in the prescribed manner, right? Acceptance should be given in some usual and reasonable manner. Like, what are usual and reasonable manners? By phone calls or, by emails, by text, something like that. Right? Then acceptance should be given within the time prescribed. It should be given before the lapse of offer. Will you buy my house? Tell me within 1 week's time. If I'm asking the other person, that means this offer is valid only for 1 week. After 1 week, the offer lapses. After 1 week, if that person comes and says yes, also that is not valid acceptance. I need not agree to it also. Acceptance may be expressed or implied. I told you. I gave you an example also. I book a cab. The cab comes to my house. I get into the cab. I tell the number, OTP number, and I sit in the cab. What is this? I am accepting. That means when I get down, whatever price has been shown to me, I will pay you that price. How did I tell that cab driver? No, I did not tell that cab driver. There were no words used for it. But it is implied. That means my action. The very fact that I went and sat in the cab, I gave an OTP number to that person. That itself is an implication that I have agreed to that acceptance, right? Next. Now, consideration also. Consideration, there is one very important term which is used for consideration, and that term is quid pro quo. Quid pro quo. This is a Latin term which means something in return. So when I'm asked, when there is a contract between me and X for sale of my house, what am I giving as a part of this contract? I am giving my house. And what am I getting in return? I am getting 1 lakh rupees in return. So 1 lakh rupees is my consideration. It's consideration for me. And what is X getting? X is giving away 1 lakh rupees, but he is getting the house. That house is consideration for X, right? So consideration is the price of the promise. What you pay as a part of that contract, that is known as consideration, right? Um, then again, what are the essential elements of a valid consideration? The consideration must move at the desire of the promisor. That is, who has asked it. It should move only then. It must be lawful. I told you there cannot be a consideration saying that, if you kill X, I will give you 100 rupees or 1 lakh rupees, 10 lakh, whatever it is. So killing somebody's death cannot be a lawful consideration. And consideration must be real. Consideration must not be something that is physically impossible. Like, I cannot say that I will bring back a dead person, or a person's arm is amputated. I will, I will grow a new arm for that person, right? So those are all illusory considerations. They are not physically possible. Then legally impossible. Considerations should not be legally impossible. For example, um, I have there is a house which is owned by my mother, but I enter into contract with a saying that, I will sell you this house for 1 lakh rupees. This is an impossible consideration, because how can I give something which I do not own? The house is owned by my mother. It is not owned by me. So I cannot give anything in consideration which is not owned by me. Right? And consideration must not be the performance of existing duties. Whatever is a duty of a person, that cannot again be consideration. For example, we hear in the news every day that, government doctors or some government hospitals, when patients went for some treatment, the doctors there, or the, the doctors there or the other paramedical staff demanded money from them. That cannot be done. See, treating those patients is a part of their duty. That is what they are paid for. They cannot again ask money for that. So consideration must not be something that is already a performance of your existing duty. For example, I am being paid to take this class for you. Again, I cannot demand money from you for that, right? Then consideration may be past, present, or future, right? This is again important. Capacity of parties to contract. See, parties should have the capacity to contract. When do parties do not have the capacity to contract? Parties do not have the capacity to contract in three situations. What are those three situations? One is when a person is minor. That is, a person has not yet completed 18 years of age. Second situation is when a person has unsound mind. Unsound mind. That means, see, law has categorized people with unsound mind into three different categories: idiots, lunatics, and drunken or intoxicated people. You know who are drunken or intoxicated people? People consume alcohol, people take drugs. So, sometime after they have consumed that alcohol or drugs, they are in an intoxicated state. They are not in a state of mind where they can take proper decisions. They lack that clear understanding during that time. So when a person is in that intoxicated state, that person does not have the capacity to contract. So if you know that a person is in an intoxicated state, you do not enter into a contract with that person. If you do so, then it will be a void contract. It will be a void contract. Similarly, there are two more categories of people which law says is that there are two more categories of people which, according to law, do not have a sound mind. One is idiot, and the other one is lunatics. So, how does law define an idiot? An idiot is a person who has permanently lost his mental capabilities. So, there is this person, because of whatever reason, that person does not have any kind of mental capability, cannot think or anything like that. That kind of a person is known as an idiot. Who's a lunatic? A lunatic is a person who has spells of mental disturbance. So there could be a person who might be all right at one point of time, but then at the other, then because of some mental health disorders, might be in a state where that person is not in a state to understand anything. So such kind of a person is a lunatic person. So what does law say when it comes to idiots, lunatics, and drunken and intoxicated people? When it comes to drunken and intoxicated people, do not enter into contact with them when they are in that state, because they do not have the capacity to contract. When it comes to lunatics, yes, when their mental state is normal, you can enter into a contract with them. When their mental state is not normal, then you cannot enter into a contract with them because they do not have the capacity to contract. Coming to idiots, no, if it has been medically certified that this person does not have any mental capability, any cognitive skills are zero, then at no point of time you can enter into a contract with that person. Right? Then, so when do we say that a person does not have sound mind? Two conditions. Two conditions should be fulfilled. What are those two conditions? A person is said to be of sound mind when that person is able to understand the nature and contents of the contract. See, I want to sell my house to X. What is this contract about? Right? What is this contract about? I should know that. Right? I should have a very clear understanding about the nature and contents of the contract. Second thing, I should be capable of forming a rational judgment about the effects of the contract. For example, I am selling a house to X. What does it mean? It means forever that house would not be mine. I would have to partake with the house. All those things that, I should be in a position to understand all those things. If I'm not in a position to understand all those things, then it means that I do not have a sound mind. Right. Now, this is important. What is the effect? See, you've seen who is a minor. A minor is a person who is not yet completed 18 years of age. Now, what happens if you enter into an agreement with a minor? Right? All agreements with a minor are void ab initio. That means from the beginning they are void, null and void. There is no legal validity for any kind of an agreement with a minor. Right? 1 second. Yes. The next one is no liability for fraud. So take for example, a minor commits a fraud. In the sense, a minor misrepresents his age and then enters into a contract. That amounts to fraud, right? So even if a minor misrepresents his age and enters into a contract, and at a later point of time it has been proved that minor has intentionally entered into a contract by fraudulent means, even then a minor would not be liable for any damages incurred. Right? Then ratification of agreements entered by a minor at a later date after reaching the age of majority. That is also not possible. That means, take for example, I am 17 years, 11 months today, right? So I enter into a contract with somebody, and after 1 month, that is, I complete 18 years of age, uh, I complete, I get my majority. So today I enter into a contract, but law says that the contract that I entered into today is a null contract, is a void contract. So today I enter into a contract, and after 1 month, after completing 8 years, then can I ratify that contract? No, I cannot ratify the contract. So a major cannot ratify any contracts that he or she entered into when he or she was a minor. Same person, but after completing that 18 years, can they ratify? Can they confirm their own contracts or agreements? They cannot. If they want, they have to enter into a new contract, new agreement. That old one is null and void. Now you have to enter a new one. Right? Next one, restoration of property or money. Can money or property be restored from a minor? Property or money can be restored from the minor if it is available in that form. So take for example, a minor fraudulently misrepresented his age and borrowed 1 lakh rupees from X. Now later afterwards, X came to know that this person is a minor, and now I have given the money, but later I cannot take it back from that minor because all agreements entered into with that minor are null void. So that X comes to this minor and says, "Come on, give back my money." If the minor still has the money left with him, yes, he has to give back that money. But assume the minor has spent all 1 lakh rupees. Then the minor cannot be forced to pay back that money. So restoration is not possible if that property or money does not exist. Okay, take for example, that minor has borrowed 1 lakh rupees. He has spent 90,000 rupees. He is only left with 10,000 with him now. Yes, that 10,000 rupees can be given back. Law will insist that minor to return back the 10,000 rupees. But law cannot insist minors and say that, you have spent 90,000, now do whatever you want to, you get back that 90,000 from wherever. No, law cannot insist like that. Next one is minor's property liable for necessaries. This is important point. Is a minor's property liable for necessaries? Yes. That means, see, take for example, I am a minor. I have some property on my name. Now, because I am a minor, I cannot borrow money from anybody. I mean, I cannot borrow in the sense, if I want to borrow money from somebody also, they will not give it to me because any contract agreement entered into with me is a void contract. So, for example, A is there. A has lent me 1 lakh rupees. If I don't return that 1 lakh, A cannot insist me to pay the money. So will A give, see, any person with a common sense, will he give money to somebody when they know that they cannot get back that money from them? Nobody. Nobody will give. You and I also will not give. But if a minor is borrowing something from a money lender for his necessaries, necessaries means what? Basic requirements. Necessaries means basic requirements. See, for example, I am a minor. I don't have anybody to take care of me. I have a lot of property. But now I don't have food to eat. Now I don't have, I don't have money to pay my college fees, school fees, medical expenses. If I have any medical expenses, I cannot, I don't have money to meet those medical expenses also. Now, if that money lender lends me money for these purposes, that money lender can get his money back from my property. right? So a minor's property is liable for the necessaries that the minor has taken, right? This is an important point that you have to remember. Again, for free consent. So when do we say that consent is free? When both the parties agree upon the same thing in the same sense. So I have asked X, will you buy my house for 1 lakh rupees? If X also agrees to it and says yes, then we can say that the consent is free. But take for example, X does not want to buy my house, but I threaten X. If you don't buy this house, I will harm you, or I will do something, or I will trouble you, or whatever it is, or I will kill somebody in your family. And because of that fear, if X says yes, then that means there is no free consent. So whenever we make people accept an offer out of fear, because of some threats, right? Then it is said there is no free consent, and that consent is said to be caused by coercion, right? Threat to commit suicide also. Just a second, just give me one. Yeah. So that is known as coercion, right? So, out of fear, if people are accepting, then that is known as coercion. The next one is undue influence. See, sometimes what happens, people don't threaten, or it is not out of fear, but it is out of some undue influence. That means one person is in a superior position to the other person. One person is in a superior position to the other person, right? Like a master servant, a doctor and a patient. So even such kind of consents also are not said to be free consent. Right? Fraud again, like for example, I tell X, will you buy my house for 1 lakh rupees? This house was constructed in 2010, but in reality, the house was constructed in 1990. So what am I doing? I am misrepresenting facts, and based on this misrepresentation, I am taking some that person's acceptance. This is also said to be not caused by free consent. Again, misrepresentation is also same as fraud, but that means false information. But in fraud, that false information is intentionally given. In misrepresentation, false information is unintentionally given. Right? Mistake, again, mistake as to the existence of the object. Right? So all these things, if they are there, then the consent is not said to be free. Okay, so what happens if the consent is not free? If the consent is not free, the contract becomes voidable. It becomes voidable. When does it become voidable? It becomes voidable at the option of the affected party. Just a second. Right. So take for example, A and B are entering into a contract. A has forced B to enter the contract. So the contract is voidable at the option of B. That means if B wants, that contract can be continued. If B wants, that contract can be cancelled. So law is giving that option to B. Because B was forced, because B was threatened, law is giving that option to B. Do you want to go ahead with the contract or do you want to cancel the contract? Whatever you say, we will go based on that. Similarly, undue influence also. There was a master who has unduly influenced the servant to enter into some contract. Law gives that servant the option. If you want to go ahead with the contract, you can go ahead, or if you want to, you can cancel the contract. Similarly, for fraud also, misrepresentation and mistake also. Just a definition of coercion is the committing or threatening to commit any act that is forbidden by the Indian Penal Code. Right? All that comes to coercion. In fact, threat to commit suicide also falls under coercion. So, if X threatens Y, saying that, if you don't do this, I will commit suicide. Or if you don't listen to me, I will commit suicide. This also amounts to coercion. So, threatening to commit suicide is also unlawful, illegal. You cannot force people to do something. See, if it is some social relation, that is a different thing. A girl wants to marry somebody and she threatens her parents. If you don't allow me to marry that boy, I will commit suicide or something like that. See, that is a different thing. But if you are making somebody sign some property papers, if you are making somebody buy something or something like that based on that threat to commit suicide, then all such contracts are voidable. See, undue influence, I told you, doctor and patient, advocate and client, all these people, that undue influence is supposed to exist. Right? Next one is features of undue influence. So when do we say that undue influence is there? When one person is in a position to dominate the will of the other person, then we can say that undue influence is there, and that the dominant person has used his position to obtain an unfair advantage over the weaker party. See, for example, I told you between master and servant. So, can there be no contracts between a master and a servant? There can be, but the master should not use his position to exploit the servant. For example, servant has a house worth 10 lakh rupees. Master, if he buys that house for 1 lakh rupees, this is a clear example of undue influence. But the 10 lakh rupees house that the servant is having, master is buying it for 10 lakhs, then there is no case of undue influence. Right? Similarly, yes. Contract of indemnity. I told you contract of indemnity is a contract where one person, one party promises to save the other party from whatever loss that has been caused to that party. That is known as a contract of indemnity. Insurance is an example of indemnity contract, right? So vehicle insurance we take, life insurance we take, health insurance we take. So those are all examples of indemnity, right? So there are two types of indemnities: express indemnity, implied indemnity. Again, express indemnity is written. Everything is written. Implied indemnity, it is not written anywhere, but obligation arises from the facts and conduct of the party. So, for example, in a master-servant relationship, for example, the master tells the servant, you go and do this. You go and give this to X. And because of that, the servant gets into some problem, some trouble. It is the responsibility of the master to indemnify the servant, that is, bear the losses whatever the servant has incurred. This is an example of implied indemnity. Right? Guarantee also. See, indemnity, there are two parties. Guarantee, there are three parties. In who are the two parties in an indemnity? One second. Indemnifier and indemnified, or indemnity holder. What do you mean by indemnifier? Indemnifier is a person who promises to compensate the losses. That person is the indemnifier. So indemnity has two parties to it, indemnifier and indemnified. Guarantee has three parties to it, creditor, principal debtor, and surety. Creditor is the person to whom the guarantee is given. Principal debtor is the person in whose default the guarantee has been given. And surety is the person who is giving that guarantee. So take for example, I have borrowed 1 lakh rupees from State Bank of India and my friend has signed as surety there. That means if I fail to repay that 1 lakh rupees, now SBI will ask my friend to make the repayment, right? So there are three people here involved, me, bank and my friend. So bank is the creditor. Bank, why is it? It is the creditor to whom my friend has given the guarantee. My friend is the surety and I am the principal debtor. Correct? Um, uh, Next, again, this liability of surety is important. Is liability of a surety more than that of the principal debtor or less than that of the principal debtor? No. Liability of the surety is coextensive with that of the principal debtor. That means it is as much as the principal debtor. Liability of a surety is as much as the principal debtor, and as long as the principal debtor has that liability. The moment the principal debtor is discharged from the liability, surety is also discharged. So in this example, for example, I borrowed 1 lakh rupees from SBI and my friend has signed a surety. If for some reason I am discharged from the liability, okay, I am discharged from the liability. If SBI says, okay, you need not pay. They can't say you need not pay to me and then ask my friend to pay the money. No. If I am discharged of my liability, then my friend cannot be held liable. So that is why it is said liability of a surety is coextensive with that of the principal debtor. That means it exists along with the principal debtor. If principal debtor's liability is not there, surety's liability also would not be there. And one more thing is, creditor cannot directly take an action against the surety, or a creditor cannot directly go and demand the money from the surety. Creditor first has to demand money from the principal debtor, has to use every possible means to get the payment from the principal debtor. Only when that is not possible, only when the creditor, that means in this case, for example, bank, only when the bank has taken all the reasonable steps to take money from the principal debtor and the principal debtor, the payment is still not done, only then the surety comes into the picture. So it is not like, for example, principal debtor is not lifting my call, so I will trouble the surety. No, it is not like that. Right? So now what are the rights that the principal debtor has? Principal debtor has the right of subrogation. Principal debtor has the right of indemnity. Subrogation means once the surety has made the payment. So in this example, for example, uh, I have borrowed 1 lakh rupees from SBI. I am not paying the money. Now, uh, because I'm not paying the money, what did SBI do? SBI asked my friend to pay that 1 lakh rupees. The moment my friend has paid that 1 lakh rupees, now my friend will become a creditor. From surety, my friend will now become a creditor. And whatever rights a creditor has, all those rights now my friend will get. And the last one is right of indemnity. That means because of signing the surety, because of giving that guarantee, if the surety has to bear any losses, all those losses the principal debtor has to repay. The principal debtor has to pay all those losses. That is known as right of indemnity. Then the surety also has rights against the creditor. What are the rights against the creditor? Whatever was given as security by the principal debtor, once the surety makes the payment, all those securities has to be given to the surety. So any documents, anything, any asset, anything that was given as security at the time of taking the loan, all those securities have to be returned to the creditor. And the right that a surety has is, surety also has the right to ask for a set off. That means, take for example, I have borrowed 1 lakh rupees from SBI, but I'm not repaying. Now, my friend has been asked to repay the money. Take for example, I have a fixed deposit of 50,000 rupees in SBI. So what my friend can do is, okay, since she is not paying the money, and since I have given the guarantee, I will pay, but you first adjust the FD amount. First, take her FD amount and deduct it from the loan amount, and the remaining amount I will pay. That right the creditor has, and the surety has. Surety also has rights against the co-sureties. So co-surety means he or she has the right to ask for contribution. So there are 3 people who have signed as guarantors. And if 1 lakh rupees is to be paid now, that 1 lakh rupees should be equally distributed between all the 3, and all of them would be asked to pay the money. Right? Okay. Next thing is, when can a surety be discharged from his liability? Right? But till what time does the liability of a surety continue? This is important. Death of surety, right? The moment death of a surety, that will discharge a surety from all the future liabilities. Whatever has happened in the past, that he will be liable for, or his legal representative. But in future, for a continuing guarantee or future transactions, the surety would be discharged. Right? Notice of revocation, right? If any notice is given that future transactions would be revoked, would be cancelled, then also surety would be discharged. Then the third scenario is, if the principal debtor and the creditor change the terms of the contract without the approval of the surety, then also surety would be discharged. Like, I borrowed 1 lakh rupees from SBI. My friend has signed as the guarantor. Now again I approach SBI and say I want 20,000 more on the same loan, like top-up loan. If SBI is giving me 20,000 more with the same person as the guarantor without informing that person, that means that that is the creditor and the principal debtor, are changing the terms of the contract. So my friend will no longer be liable. My friend can say, see, when I signed, the amount was 1 lakh rupees. Now, without informing me, without taking my approval, you have increased to 1,20,000. I am no longer liable. Okay? Then another scenario is, if the creditor releases the principal debtor. It releases the principal debtor in the sense, if the creditor says that the principal debtor need not pay the money, then the surety automatically is discharged. Right? If the creditor is giving extra time to the principal debtor, or if the creditor is not taking appropriate measures to demand money from the principal debtor, is not suing the principal debtor in case of non-payment, then also surety will be discharged. So take for example, every month I had to pay EMI for 1 lakh rupees. Every month I had to pay 10,000 rupees. I am not paying, and the bank is also not doing anything about it. Bank is not calling me, bank is not informing me, bank is not taking any adequate steps. Now, after 1 year, they can go and ask my friend, come on, now you will give that 1 lakh. I should have taken adequate steps. Only then the surety will be held responsible. Okay? Then bailment and pledge was one topic that we discussed. So what happens in bailment is, goods are transferred from one person to another person, from a bailer to a bailee, and after the purpose is accomplished, again the goods have to be returned back to the bailer. That is known as bailment. And what is pledge? Pledge is, again, goods are transferred from one person to another person with the intention of using those goods or property or whatever it is as security. So transfer of goods is taking place both in bailment as well as pledge. Transfer of goods is there, but the purpose is different. In pledge, transfer of goods is taking place only for using it as a security for some loan. But in bailment, it could be for anything. Uh, you could send some goods through courier, right? You could give your vehicle to a mechanic for repair. You could ask some of your goods to be stored in a warehouse. All these are examples of bailment. Right? This is important. Finder of lost goods. Right? So who is a finder of lost goods? The one person who has found goods that were belonging to somebody else. So I'm traveling in a bus. The person sitting next to me forgot his or her bag. Right? So I am the finder of lost goods. Now, do I have any responsibilities? Yes. A finder of lost goods also has some responsibilities, some rights he has. What are the responsibilities of finder of lost goods? First, we will look at that. So, if I found a bag that belongs to somebody else, my first responsibility is to make sure that I keep it safe. My second responsibility is to make sure that I do not use it for my own personal purpose. And my third responsibility is to find out the real owner. Okay, I found a bag belonging to somebody else. I safely go and keep it in my house and completely forget about it. No, that is wrong. If you have found any goods or belongings of somebody else, it is your responsibility to make sure that you find the real owner. You cannot just keep it in your house for years together like that. Right? Okay. Now, these are the responsibilities. These are the duties of finder of lost. But does he also have any rights? Does a finder of lost goods also have any rights? Yes, he also has some rights. What are those rights? Now, if the finder of goods has spent any money in the process of finding the owner, in the process of sending the goods to the owner, right? He has the right to recover that amount, right? So, take for example, I found the bag belonging to somebody else. With great difficulty, I found out the address and I sent it through courier. And I spent 400 rupees for courier charges. Now, it is my right to get back those courier charges, and I can say that as long as you don't pay me these courier charges, I will not give you your bag. That is known as right to lien, right to keep possession of the property till the particular expenses are not reimbursed. Right? This is one thing. Second thing, another right that finder of lost goods has is at times they also have the right to sell. See, we said it belongs to somebody else. It has to be kept safe. It cannot be used for personal purpose and all those things. But take, for example, if the goods are of perishable nature, like vegetables I found, fruits I have found belong to somebody else, milk I have found. Can I keep it safe for long? No, I cannot. I can sell it then. But whatever price I get, I will have to return. I will have to give it back to the owner. And there is one more circumstance. There is one more scenario also where I can sell the goods. If the owner is not paying any lawful charges that I have incurred, then also I can sell those goods. Then also I have the right to sell those goods. This we have already discussed. Pledge I told. Contract for sale of goods, right? Who is a buyer? A buyer is someone who buys or has agreed to buy goods. A seller is someone who sells or has agreed to sell goods. So that is a buyer and a seller. Goods are all kinds of movable property other than actionable claims and money. Even stock, shares, grass, growing crops, timber, which is part of the land, even these also can be called as goods. And goods can be of three types: existing goods, future goods, and contingent goods. So existing goods are those goods which which are identified and agreed upon at this point of time. So I have 10 kgs of mangoes with me. Those are existing goods. I have them right now with me. Future goods, I have a farmhouse on which mangoes will grow and I will sell those mangoes. So those are future goods. That means at this point of time, I do not have them with me. But in future, I will have them. Right? So existing goods, future goods, and contingent goods. So again, in existing goods, you have three types of goods: specific goods, ascertained goods, and unascertained goods. So specific goods are those goods which are identified and agreed upon when the contract of sale is formed. So like I told you, I have a bag of mangoes, and I tell somebody, see, this is the bag of mangoes I have. I'm willing to sell it for 1,000 rupees. So these are specific goods. Now, take for example, I have I have 500 mangoes with me, and I have decided to sell only 200 out of these. So I have separated these 200 mangoes from that large group of 500 mangoes. Right? So now these 200 mangoes are known as ascertained goods. What are unascertained goods? Okay, I have 500 mangoes with me. I only want to sell 200 mangoes, but which 200 I don't know. These are known as unascertained goods. Future goods, like I told you, they are not there right now. The seller does not have them at this point of time, but the seller will get them in a future date. So those are future goods. Right? Contingent goods are you might, or so for example, I have a farm, a mango farm. I might get 100 kgs of mangoes from it, or 80 or 90. I don't exactly know. So those are contingent goods. I might or I might not get those. Right? Then differences between sale and bailment also again they are important. Right? Bail. See, one major difference between sale and bailment. In sale, transfer of property takes place. That means goods are earlier seller was the owner, now buyer becomes the owner. In bailment, no, there is no transfer of ownership. Ownership remains with the bailer only. That is the primary difference between sale and bailment. And bailment can only happen with respect to movable property. Whereas sale, like can be with movable or immovable property. Bailment can only take place as far as movable properties are concerned. And another important difference between sale and bailment could be gratuitous or non-gratuitous. That means there may be consideration or there may be no consideration. But sale cannot be like that. Sale should always have a consideration. So these are some important differences between sale and bailment. Okay. Another important topic that you need to know is differences between sale and agreement to sell. What happens in sale? Immediately transfer of ownership takes place. Right? So, after sale, take for example, sale has taken place and the purchaser does not pay for the items. Now, what a seller can do, seller may file a lawsuit to recover the purchase price. But in case of agreement to sell, take for example, the buyer refuses to take delivery of the goods and pay for them. The seller may only bring a claim to damages. See, why does this happen? In sale, okay, in sale, transfer of ownership takes place immediately. Whereas in an agreement to sell, transfer of ownership does not take place. Right? So in an agreement to sell, only buyer can what buyer can do is buyer can only claim for damages because the seller is the rightful owner of the items. It is not the buyer, right? And in an agreement to sale, if the products are destroyed for some reason, then the seller is responsible for the loss. However, if there is a sale, then the buyer is responsible for the loss, even though the things may still not be in possession of the buyer, right? We will this topic can again be same thing you can understand in transfer of ownership also. So whenever transfer of ownership takes place, only then the buyer, whoever it is, if it is the buyer or the seller, whenever the transfer of ownership takes place, only then the person will be held responsible, right? So conditions and warranties. What are conditions and warranties? Conditions and warranties are the representations that parties make to each other at the time of entering into a contract of sale. Like, my house is very good, best quality cement was used here. This was constructed in the year 1990. This is built on an area of 200 square yards. These are all representations. So these representations can be classified into two types: conditions and warranties. Condition, what is the difference between condition and warranty? Condition is an essential element, or it is very essential to the main purpose of the contract. So, and if a condition is not fulfilled, the other party can terminate the contract. Whereas warranty is collateral to the main purpose of the contract. Warranty is collateral to the main purpose of the contract. And if this warranty is not fulfilled, then that party can only claim damages, but it cannot. It has no right to reject the goods or terminate the contract, right? So warranties again are of two types: express warranties and implied warranties. So what are express warranties? See, whenever you buy something, the model number is given there. Or if you're buying a laptop, what is the hard disk capacity, and all those things are given. Those are express conditions. Similarly, warranty, it is 5 years warranty, 3 years warranty. These are clearly given on paper. So they are known as express conditions and express warranties. But sometimes these conditions and warranties are implied also. That means you need not make those representations every time. That need not happen every time. Right? So what are those implied conditions? Let us first look at implied conditions, then we'll go to implied warranties. So the first one is condition as to title. So there is an implied condition on the part of the seller that the seller has the right to sell the goods. That means if I am saying I will sell my house to you, that means there is an implied condition that I am the owner of the house. If I am not the owner of the house, I cannot sell it. So when somebody is approaching you to sell something, you need not verify or check whether that person is the real owner or not, because that is an implied condition. Similarly, condition in case of sale by description. So if somebody is describing something and then selling it to us, there is an implied condition that the actual product will correspond or will match with the description. Then condition in sale by sample. Here also, whatever quality of sample was shown, the actual product should match with this sample in quality. There should be a match between the sample that was shown and the final product that was delivered. And